Ukraine's persistent pushback against the Russian invasion continues to gain significant momentum as more sovereign territory is being liberated every single day. The Russian forces remain in a state of absolute disarray after the unexpected shutdown of Starlink, leaving them with no viable answers. What we are witnessing right now on the modern battlefield is something that Vladimir Putin never expected would come to pass so quickly. Although Ukraine is carefully planning for a potential Russian spring offensive, it clearly has a much bigger and more vital prize in mind. That strategic objective is the liberation of Crimea, and the vital land bridge connecting Russia to the peninsula is about to go down. Ukraine is currently executing a complex military maneuver that could potentially free the occupied region of Crimea from foreign control forever and ever. At first glance, this bold claim might seem like a strange or even impossible goal for a nation facing such a massive adversary. As we watch the brave Ukrainian defenders retake their land, it becomes clear that the country is taking decisive steps toward liberating Crimea. The most obvious sign of this strategy is the specific territory that Ukraine is currently choosing to retake from the retreating Russian troops. The country is setting itself up to defend against an incoming Russian offensive during the hot spring and summer months of this year. This defensive posture is actually part of a much larger plan to dismantle the Russian military infrastructure along the critical Crimean front line. The successful deoccupation of so much territory is laying the necessary foundation for Ukraine to finally cripple the occupied and isolated peninsula. Crimea has become one of Russia's most critical logistical nodes, and shattering its connectivity will ruin their attempts to take more territory. The land bridge between Russia and Crimea is the primary target, and we will explain precisely why this mission is so important. The current operations seen from the Ukrainian military are setting the stage for the total liberation of the peninsula in the near future. We need to look closely at what Ukraine is doing right now to understand how these tactical victories lead to a grand strategy. While the focus of the entire world has been placed on the diplomatic tussling between Russia and Ukraine, significant events are occurring. This international attention is further complicated by the added helping of the United States military operations that are currently ongoing in Iran. Despite these global distractions, the elite Ukrainian assault units have been quickly making substantial progress in the southeastern regions of their country. The military operations are currently moving in the strategic direction of Orikhiv and Zaporizhia, to secure a vital foothold for future missions. Recent reports from News Skies state that tectonic shifts have occurred on the complex chessboard of the Southern Front since early March. These shifts could determine the ultimate course of the year 2026 campaign and shift the balance of power toward defenders. Ukrainian assault units carried out a series of lightning strikes that managed to break through many of the occupiers' most defensive redoubts. This success is not just a local victory, but the beginning of an operation aimed at cutting the aggressor's vital logistical arteries. The security architecture of the entire Azov region is being fundamentally changed as Ukrainian forces push deeper into the heart of occupied lands. By early March, the military has managed to liberate several key settlements in the southeast direction through highly coordinated and effective strikes. These operations have included the retaking of several dominant heights, which will allow for superior monitoring of all enemy movements and activities. From these elevated positions, the military will be able to launch sophisticated drone attacks and advanced electronic warfare operations against the occupiers. Artillery operations will also be more effective because the soldiers can now see the targets with much greater clarity and tactical precision. These strategic heights are forcing a Russian retreat on a scale that the world has not witnessed for many years of this war. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces recently shared on Telegram that their methodical destruction of enemy forces is yielding amazing results. The logistical arteries in the southeast are being severed, making it nearly impossible for the Russian army to supply their frontline troops. This systematic approach ensures that every inch of land regained is fortified and protected against any potential counterattacks from Russian side. The world is finally seeing the true capability of the Ukrainian military as they execute these complex and highly dangerous battlefield maneuvers. As of now, 9 settlements have been successfully liberated and cleared of the enemy through the relentless efforts of the Ukrainian forces. 3 critical settlements in our operational zone have been fully cleared of the enemy, as work continues to liberate even more areas. The General Staff recently declared that what were once heavily fortified Russian positions have now been retaken by the brave Ukrainian army. Since January 29th, which is when this major operation started, the statistics have made for terrible reading for the Kremlin leadership. Reports indicate over 6,537 Russian casualties, with 4,355 being completely irrecoverable. This staggering loss of human life highlights the sheer brutality of the conflict and the total failure of the current Russian leadership. In addition to these massive personnel losses, 419 units of critical military equipment were destroyed by precise Ukrainian strikes. This included 147 artillery systems and over 240 motor vehicles that were essential for Russian supply, 14 armored combat vehicles, and 108 drone command posts were also sent up in flames during these intense combat operations. You must bear in mind that all of these devastating losses have been experienced by Russia in only one single strategic direction. Every push that the Ukrainian army makes costs Russia more in resources and manpower, weakening their overall ability to sustain the war. It is becoming increasingly clear that the Russian defense is about as effective as a wet paper bag against the Ukrainian advance. By the middle of February, the new Voice of Ukraine reported that President Zelensky revealed even more successes in the southeastern regions. Ukraine has liberated about 300 square kilometers of land, which is roughly equivalent to 115 square miles of territory. These territorial gains led the commander-in-chief, Oleksandr Syrsky, to declare that Ukraine is regaining control of more land than before. For the first time since the Kursk offensive in August, the Ukrainian military is outperforming the Russian occupiers in terms of territory. The systematic destruction of Russian reserves is creating a massive vacuum that the Kremlin cannot easily fill with new and untrained recruits. Each destroyed artillery system means less fire support for the Russian infantry, making them even more vulnerable to the advancing Ukrainian units. The sheer scale of these losses is a testament to the effectiveness of the modern weaponry and tactics being used by Ukraine. Soldiers on the ground report that the morale of the Russian troops is at an all-time low as they face constant bombardment. If you are wondering what all of this has to do with Crimea, we will be digging into that very soon. To understand the grand strategy, we first have to give you a little hint regarding a settlement known as Tokmak City. According to recent reports from News Sky, everything that Ukraine is doing right now is allowing the country to expand its influence. The gray zone that exists in the direction of Tokmak is slowly growing as Ukrainian forces push the Russian defenders further back. That specific settlement is extremely important in its own right because it serves as a key logistics hub for the Russian Federation. But the expansion of the gray zone in this direction signifies that Ukraine is now making a much deeper push towards south. Tokmak is the next major target on the list, and after that, the strategic city of Melitopol will come into the equation. It is at this specific point that the liberation of Crimea becomes a real possibility for the Ukrainian military and its leadership. The logistical noose is slowly being tightened around Russia's neck as their supply routes are being targeted by long-range precision strikes. Do not underestimate the vital importance of the gray zone that Ukraine is currently creating through its persistent and brave combat operations. These are specific zones that are not under the direct control of either the Ukrainian government or the illegal Russian occupiers. What the expansion of these zones allows Ukraine to do is constrict the movement of enemy troops and their heavy military equipment. Occupied territories that were once firmly under Russian control are now being pelted with artillery, drones, and heavy attacks by assault units. As Ukraine pushes further south, it turns what was once a secure Russian zone into a dangerous and highly contested gray zone. The Ukrainian military then keeps pushing forward, engaging in clearing occupied areas to fully liberate the settlements and the surrounding territory. As the Russian presence degrades over time, these zones are constricted again and consolidated under the full control of the Ukrainian state. This cycle of expansion and constriction allows Ukraine to make consistent and steady progress as it pushes the invading forces back. Every mile gained in the direction of Melitopol puts the Russian land bridge in greater danger of being completely severed by artillery. The strategic collapse of the Russian southern front is no longer a distant dream, but a rapidly approaching reality for the entire region. To make matters even worse for the Russian army, the Ukrainian military fills the expanded gray zones with hundreds of lethal drones. These specific zones often expand at least 10 kilometers behind the recognized combat lines and become absolute death traps for the invaders. Russian vehicles and soldiers are constantly targeted as they attempt to move critical equipment and themselves around the dangerous and contested battlefield. Although Russian drones are also present in these zones, the problem that Ukraine creates is the cutting off of all logistical routes. This systematic destruction of supply lines weakens the ability of the Russian army to cause any significant damage within these expanded zones. Ukraine keeps pushing forward while fortifying every new position as they go, effectively forcing a retreat of the many demoralized Russian troops. Unmanned aerial vehicles are the primary key to this successful strategy, and are now responsible for 70% of all recorded casualties. The constant surveillance from above ensures that no Russian movement goes unnoticed by the highly skilled and motivated Ukrainian drone pilot teams. Advanced electronic warfare units work alongside these drone teams to jam enemy communications and disrupt the coordination of the Russian defensive lines. This multi-layered approach to modern warfare is proving to be far more effective than the old and outdated Soviet-era military doctrines. By utilizing small and cheap drones to destroy expensive tanks, Ukraine is winning the war of attrition against a much larger enemy. Every successful drone strike reduces the firepower available to the occupiers and makes the path to liberation much safer for infantry. The psychological impact of being hunted by invisible machines from the sky is causing many Russian soldiers to abandon their fortified positions. Ukraine's tactical genius lies in its ability to adapt to new technologies and integrate them into a cohesive and very powerful strategy. As the gray zones grow, the Russian army finds itself increasingly isolated and unable to receive the necessary reinforcements and food supplies. This methodical approach is the hallmark of a modern military that values the lives of its soldiers while maximizing the enemy's losses. The combination of aerial and naval drones is creating a total blockade that will eventually lead to the collapse of Russian defenses. This drone-centric warfare is redefining the rules of engagement and giving the Ukrainian defenders a massive advantage over the primitive Russian forces. Another factor allowing Ukraine to make these pushes as Russia is forced to withdraw is the implementation of network-centric warfare tactics. The tactical success of the armed forces of Ukraine is fundamentally based on this modern concept where each unit acts as one. Every single military unit operates as part of a single organism, receiving data from various drones and reconnaissance teams in real time. The receipt of high-quality drone data is key, and that is something that Russia is now sorely lacking in the field. The recent Starlink shutdown has left the Russian forces in complete and total disarray, unable to coordinate their many defensive military actions. Reconnaissance drones constantly prowl the gray zones that Ukraine is expanding, providing a continuous stream of live and highly accurate video footage. This live footage is supplemented by data captured from FPV drones conducting successful kamikaze strikes within the dangerous and contested gray zones. All of this vital information is poured into a central and highly secure Ukrainian system, which is widely known as the Delta. Delta is absolutely vital to the Ukrainian defense as a cloud-based system that provides real-time situational awareness to every soldier. This sophisticated system was created back in 2021, just 1 year before Vladimir Putin launched his illegal and unprovoked invasion. It allows all of the Ukrainian forces to see exactly what their many drones and reconnaissance units capture on the chaotic battlefield. Movements of Russian troops are shared instantly across the network, along with the precise locations of their many retreating and scattered units. Delta provides the undeniable proof that Ukrainian drone strikes were successful, while also showing which areas of land are safe to occupy. The system does not require any specialists or specific hardware settings to access, making it incredibly versatile for the soldiers on ground. Any soldier in the Ukrainian military can access the secure platform on a simple laptop, a basic tablet, or even a smartphone. They gain instant access to human intelligence, along with satellite imagery and live drone footage to coordinate their many complex tactical attacks. Every push that Ukraine makes against Russia is propped up by this constant flow of data, which the Russian forces cannot see. To sum it up very simply, Ukraine can see exactly what is happening on the battlefield, while Russia is essentially fighting blind. This technological advantage is the hidden force behind the liberation of the South and the eventual return of the entire Crimean Peninsula. The utilization of network-centric warfare and the push into the South will have a truly massive impact on the Crimean Peninsula. Every mile that the Ukrainian army advances in the southern direction brings them much closer to these two key strategic settlements. Russia has spent almost a decade militarizing the occupied Crimean Peninsula ahead of the full-blown invasion that started back in February 2022. However, gaining fire control over the Crimean land bridge would mean that Ukraine can launch far more intense missile and drone strikes. This strategic move is all about degrading the Russian war machine to the point where they can no longer defend their illegal holdings. International military observers note that success in the south creates the necessary prerequisites for a broader operation to deoccupy Berdyansk and Mariupol. Russia is now losing about 40,000 soldiers per month, which is far more than the government can successfully recruit or train. This forced reliance on reserves and poorly trained volunteers is weakening whatever grand ambitions the Russian generals have for the coming summer. If Ukraine gains fire control over the vital land bridge, it will lead to the slow but steady degradation of the entire Russian army. The path to a free and sovereign Ukraine is long and difficult, but the light of true liberation is finally shining through. We will continue to follow these historic developments closely as the world watches the heroic struggle for freedom against a brutal aggressor. Please make sure to like this informative video and subscribe to the Apex Warfare channel for more expert analysis of the conflict. Your incredible support helps us provide the latest and most accurate updates on the changing tide of this important and historic war. Thank you for watching our show today, and we hope to see you again in our next video about the global military.